It has been a frustrating season for Tobias Harris and an even more frustrating season for every Sixers fan that has been forced to watch him play. And I am hoping and praying that we have finally hit the rock bottom for what is the Tobias Harris experience, because I thought we've hit it 3 or 4 times already this year. But I think we did finally have that moment, as the performance against the New York Knicks absolutely takes the cake as not only the worst performance of the season, but likely ever in Tobias Harris's Sixers career. This is by far the worst that I've seen him play, and it is a low bar that he had to clear. So to dive right into exactly, in the blowout loss to the Knicks, obviously the Sixers and Knicks coming off a back-to-back matchup, the Sixers did manage to squeeze to a win, a rock fight of a win on Sunday, and shorthanded lack of offensive production from both sides managed to scrape their way to a victory, and the Knicks came storming back with a vengeance on Tuesday, with the Sixers having no answer, and the biggest reason for that being the $40 million man being nowhere to be found. So to take a look at the box score in that 106-79 victory by the Knicks, Tobias Harris in his 26 minutes of play, just 2 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, and 2 steals, shot 1 of 6 from the field, and 0 for 2 from 3. And these were good looks that we saw from Tobias. That early on in that matchup, back-to-back possessions where both Tyrese Maxey and Kelly Oubre creating wide-open corner threes for Tobias, rimming out both of them. And I'm not holding you to the fire that you're going to make 100% of every shot, but you can feel the way this is weighing on Tobias in the same way that it is everything. This is not just a missed shot in the same way of the flow of the game, that there is some weight. You feel the shoulders falling down, the frustration coming out, and it's down on every single shot. That you can tell that this is a guy that is spiraling, and that is the unfortunate reality. But I'm not here to make excuses for Tobias Harris. And by the way, don't take my word that this is the worst game that Tobias Harris has played. That if you want to look at the Basketball Reference game score, which is a way that they managed to quantify the impact on the game based on the box score, that's not just including points, but pulling in other factors such as assists, rebounds, steals, etc. If you sort that for this year and look at the worst game score that you want to see, it is that matchup for the Sixers versus the New York Knicks, where Tobias registered a 0.8 on the game score. For reference, around 17 is about the average number. And another point that I did want to bring up here is looking right at the number 2 worst performance of Tobias Harris this season, 0.9 against the Boston Celtics. That also occurred during this recent stretch of shorthanded games. In fact, if you look at the 12 worst performances this year based on game score, that 5 of those 12 performances all coming during this shorthanded stretch. And I'm not going to say that metric is everything, but it absolutely matches the eye test. That the frustration surrounding Tobias Harris could not be more loud. That, I mean, we are quite literally talking about Sixers fan creating petitions to bench Tobias Harris from the Philadelphia 76ers starting lineup. And shout out to Jennifer Green for starting this. I do love the little caption here that she writes saying, "As a devoted fan of the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm deeply concerned about our team's chances of making a playoff run. The performance of Tobias Harris has been detrimental to our team's success. Despite his $180 million contract, Harris's inconsistent play and lackluster defense are causing us to lose crucial games." Source ESPN statistics. This is not just about numbers. It's about the spirit and determination that every player should bring to the court. We believe in our team and our potential. Therefore, we urge Coach Nick Nurse to bench Tobias Harris. Well said, Jennifer. I do love the passion coming out there. I do love that they were at least trying to cause a change here. And by the way, Nick Nurse well aware that this is on the table. That shout out to Sam DiGiovanni of Clutch Points for having these stones to walk in there and ask directly to his face, asking Nick Nurse if he has considered bringing Tobias Harris off the bench, to which his reply was, quote, "Nope, not yet." And especially a shout out to Sam because of the way that he phrased the question, brought it up, that already this season we've seen moments where Nick Nurse has talked about, both with Kelly Oubre and Buddy Hield, bringing them off the bench, how this provides a different outlook on the game, getting a chance to see the flow of the game, make your impact a little different way. And that's kind of how he phrased the question and brought it up, so it didn't come off in a disrespectful tone and kind of painted Nick Nurse in a little bit of a corner. But the fact that the reply was "not yet," I do think is a little telling. That was not a closed case. This guy is in the starting lineup. That was it's not the time yet. And I do think, to that point, that the debate here is not about, is Tobias Harris worthy of a starting role? Based on how he's playing, he's straight up not. But there are a lot of factors that go into this. The politics of basketball, the number that is attached to his name, that contract number that he cannot escape. But this isn't about him being overpaid at this point. This is not holding him to that $40 million standard. Frankly, if he was on a veteran's minimum, I still would be upset about the level that Tobias Harris is playing. But the bottom line is, when you look at this Sixers roster and pull down the depth chart, there's not too much behind them. that Tobias as that starting power forward, Nico Batum behind him, who who Nico Batum is at this point. The other options, Kelly Oubre obviously has slid into the starting lineup for a decent portion and straight up outplayed Tobias Harris. But beyond that, KJ Martin, maybe you can squeeze some Ricky Council the fourth minutes. The point being that the Sixers team is at its most shorthanded that it really has been all year, and we've seen this during the recent stretch. I do think of a guy like Robert Covington finally steps back on the floor. That could change things. And I do think Kelly Oubre is a notable storyline to take. That I think the battle that Nick Nurse is truly going through in his head is that the end goal is to escape this little stretch of basketball, get Joel Embiid to return to the floor, and that's when you truly construct the team. And at that moment is when you do need Tobias Harris playing his best. That no, it's not ideal that he's not being helpful and having this team to tread water and contend during these games in which you need the scoring punch, but you're still weighing the risk reward versus what does a benching of Tobias Harris do right now? Is this a situation where it's a kick in the butt to the guy that he all of a sudden turns it on? Or is this a situation where he mentally crumbles and you lose him for the year? Because you can find examples of both cases, and you have to really know a guy or how he's wired, what his mentality is to kind of have a guess for how that is the case. But if I'm looking from afar, it wouldn't surprise me if Crumble Cookie Tobias Harris is ready to pack it up if that is the case, if he hits the bench, and that's not what Nick Nurse wants. So the bottom line is you still need this guy to some extent come playoff time, so you're hoping that he can play through this and come out and regain form and ultimately play a factor come playoff time. But I'm not making excuses for the way that he's playing right now, and I do think this is noted by Nick Nurse. And shout out to my guy, Tiago, over at Edge of Philly Sports here. He pointed this out here, that the Sixers front court touches over the last 4 games, Kelly Oubre with 37.5 per game compared to Tobias Harris with 32.3. And why that's especially interesting is if you look at the pre-All-Star break numbers, Harris with 27.7 compared to Oubre's 20.0. So obviously both numbers going up without Joel Embiid there, that both players getting the opportunity. But the fact that Oubre has overtaken Tobias, and by this metric exactly, really by like a 14-point swing, considering he was 7.7 behind in touches pre-All-Star game, and now about 5, so my math was a little bit off there. But the point being that Oubre has completely overtaken him, and I do think that's something that's worth noting, that if Nick Nurse actually wants to make some type of change, when Joel returns to the floor is when we'll begin to see this. And I do want to talk a little bit more about Kelly Oubre and why I'm excited and why I do think ultimately he is clearly the better fit for this team. First off, he finally got that just slam dunk on a guy's face on Isaiah Hartenstein against this Knicks. So shout out to Kelly. He tries it every single night, and he finally got one. So awesome poster there, and he deserves it. But I think Kelly encapsulates something that I think Tobias could take note from. That we can live with the missed shots. Those are going to happen. You're never going to shoot 100%. But what has impressed me about Kelly Oubre this year is he finds a way to impact the game regardless of how his game is going. That if he's missing, he's still defending like crazy on that side of the floor. You see active hands, him getting in passing lanes, him rebounding the ball, him getting up, him getting putbacks on the offensive end, earning points for himself with those little putback slams and putbacks around the rim. Those are ways that you impact the game when you don't have it going. For Tobias, it's not just the missed shots. It's the fact that he's doing nothing else, that you're not helping out as a rebounder. You're not playmaking for this team. You're not setting pin downs to free up your teammates. You're not defending at a crazy high level. You're just straight up not doing any of these things. And that's what's frustrating. That basketball fans, you can recognize this, that you can see when a guy doesn't have it going and is trying to play through it, that he's still leaving all his heart out there. There's plenty of examples of guys doing that. I've seen this with Maxey in moments, obviously with Oubre, as I just had an example. You can even look around the league. There's plenty of moments, and that's really what the good players do, that when their shots aren't falling, they still find ways to make a positive impact on the game, because there's plenty of ways to do that beyond just scoring the basketball. And with Tobias, we know that scoring, unfortunately, is his best asset. And if you have to pick like an ideal complement for this roster, that's likely not the role that you expect. Frankly, I'd rather an Aaron Gordon type mold player for this specific position when you think about the roster fully constructed next to Joel Embiid. But the point still being that when your A game, your scoring, your shooting is not going according to plan, you have to find ways to overcome that and still be a positive impact. That's what comes with the expectations of being a veteran, being a leader, and being a $40 million man. So that's my greatest frustration with Tobias. That not only is the offensive production just non-existent, that defensively he's been worse than he has been for the most of the season and really most of his Sixers career. It cannot tumble all the way down. That yes, you can miss shots. You're going to have a shooting slump. But no, you cannot pack it up in the way that it has seemed in recent days. So I do pray that this is the low point of the Tobias Harris experience. I do pray that we are finally at the valley, finally hitting that bottom floor, that rock bottom, and that it is only up from here. But they got to get something out of him. The bottom line is this is a dude that should be more motivated than anyone, that he's on a contract here. All the conversations about surrounding him throughout his Sixers tenure has been about how overpaid he is. Well, he's about to hit the market once again. You're being asked to be the guy to step up in Joel Embiid's absence and help this team stay afloat, and you're just straight up not delivering. That I have no clue what the market for Tobias Harris will be this free agent period, but regardless of what it is, I have zero interest in him being back in a Sixers uniform. That I want no part of him ever stepping on the floor in a Sixers uniform ever again. It can be at a veteran's minimum, and I would still pass. That I'm past the point of Tobias Harris being overpaid. I'm at the point where I'm just ready to call a spade and say Tobias Harris isn't a winner. He's not a guy that can be on a championship contending team. I think even as a bench player, he's a guy that just doesn't have winning characteristics in his game, and it sucks that this is the realization. For now, the Sixers have to do what they can with what they have. But I think ultimately, Kelly Oubre is going to continue looking over Tobias Harris' shoulder, both in the short term as a starting option and in the long term as we factor in who gets that next contract. So I'm riding with Kelly Oubre. I will live with the effort. I will live with the athleticism. You have to take the bad with the good, the poor shots, the heat checks that he does give you. But the bottom line is that is a guy that brings it on a night-to-night basis, and I can live with that overall. That I would rather go into battle with Kelly Oubre that I know is going to give 100% effort than the Tobias Harris that it's unfortunately much more bad than good right now. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think there's any chance that Nick Nurse does pull the trigger and bench Tobias Harris this season? Is Kelly Oubre going to be the guy that is elevated to that starting lineup? Could you see a guy like Robert Covington being the guy sliding in, maybe going Buddy Hield instead of Tobias, and when D'Anthony Melton comes back, something along those lines? So hit me with your thoughts on that. I appreciate all you guys tuning in. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button right here on Sixers Digest, dropping a like to the video. I'll be talking with you next time. Peace.